voters from across our region are looking to cast their vote to have a say in who will make it onto the general election ballot. Tonight, we're sitting down with candidates from the Washington State Senate 8th District race. We'll cover a wide range of topics from the economy to growth in our region to goals for the upcoming year. Before you cast your ballot, Northwest Public Broadcasting and the League of Women Voters of Benton and Franklin County want you to know the candidates. Recorded on the Washington State University Tri-Cities campus, this is Vote 2022. And now, from the League of Women Voters of Benton and Franklin County, please welcome Ravine Jimenez.
Good evening and welcome to this candidate forum. My name is Ravine Jimenez. I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Benton and Franklin Counties. The League is a nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes candidates. In presenting these forums, it is our goal to provide opportunities for voters to become better informed about the people who are running for public office. The 2022 primary candidate forums have been pre-recorded in person by Northwest Public Broadcasting at the WSU Tri-City studio rather than on Zoom. They will also now be available at nwpb.org/vote2022 through our additional partners, the Columbia Basin Badger Club, the cities of Richland and Pasco, and of course the League's website and Facebook page. Please go to lwv/bf.org to see the complete information for accessing any and all of these sites through August 2nd, 2022. At this time, I would like to introduce our moderator, Matt Lovelace from Murrah College of Communication, WSU Pullman. Please welcome Matt.
Well, thanks to the League for that introduction, and thank those of you out there watching as this Vote 2022 forum dives into the issues for candidates in Washington's 8th Legislative District in this race for Senator. On behalf of Northwest Public Broadcasting, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters in Benton and Franklin Counties for continuing our collective mission here of bringing voters more insight into the candidates running to represent them. I'm also thankful that we get to do this in person this election cycle, coming to you from the WSU Tri-Cities campus after a couple of years of virtual forums and debates. Now, we've gone over the rules of the forum with the candidates. For you out there watching, here's how this program is going to go. We'll begin with a 1-minute opening statement, a 1-minute and 30-second opening statement from each candidate, followed by a line of questioning. Once those questions begin, we'll rotate the order in which our candidates will answer. 12 questions total, so a lot to talk about today. Each will have a 90-second response limit, and then time permitting, we'll allow for some quick closing statements. Now, since we are back in person here, the big thing we need to remember is to limit interruptions, please. As moderator, I'm here to keep us on topic and on time, so I do reserve the right to cut off a speaker if time is up or make some fair adjustments throughout this program. So let's get to meet our candidates for this race, a Senate seat in Washington's 8th Legislative District. Joining me today are Mr. Alex Barrington and Ms. Ronnie Batchelor. Mr. Matt Benke could not be here today, but we thank you both for coming here to this in-person candidate forum. We really appreciate your time. And as I said, we'll begin with some opening statements, 1 minute and 30 seconds for each of those. We would like to begin with you, Mr. Barrington.
Thank you, Matt. My name is Alex Barrington. I grew up here in Washington State, here in the Tri-Cities. I am running for Senate because our Washington State Legislature has made some terrible decisions over the last couple of years that have really put our people in our state in a very terrible position. We no longer are a nation of freedoms, and we're having a hard time with keeping our freedoms intact. So I am running to help remind our state legislature that it is their duty to keep, first time. Keep in mind that their purview is to safeguard the liberties of the people. That life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is what this country was founded upon, and that we need to go back to those principles.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Barrington. Ms. Batchelor, your opening statement.
I'm Ronnie Batchelor. I live in the 8th Legislative District. I am a resident of Washington and have been since I think I was 1 year old. So I'm here and I'm running for this office because I've been boots on the ground. I've seen a lot of hurt, a lot of pain. And I work in mental health as a crisis responder. And part of my job is getting people through systems of care, and sometimes those systems just aren't working for everyone. And I've seen a lot of people hit hard with this crisis of COVID-19. When that came in, several of my friends were in fear of losing their businesses, while I've seen corporate America stay open and reel in the profits. And our community deserves better than that. And the support of someone in office to continue to fight for them and their right to have business and live their life in this community and find their joy and thrive.
Ms. Batchelor, thank you very much. Mr. Barrington, thank you very much. Now let's begin with our line of questioning, and these questions coming from the League of Women Voters of Benton and Franklin counties. And we've sort of bookended this program with questions about the election. The League recently held a public discussion on election security in Washington State, featuring Benton and Franklin County auditors and the Secretary of State. We'll start with a yes or no question. Do you believe in the integrity of elections in our state, and why or why not, Mr. Barrington?
I do. We have a pretty good process right now, but it obviously can be improved.
You have a minute 20 left. More thoughts on election security in the state?
Well, I think that we need to have maybe a little bit more security with the mail-in ballots. Mail-in ballots, they shouldn't be a thing where you can, man, I'm having a hard time. Sorry, Matt.
Well, it's okay, man. Maybe I'll help you with a little more specific question in terms of that. You said, I think it can be improved.
Yes.
Even though you believe in our election security. How can it be improved?
Well, I think that they need to have a system in place where your ballot goes directly to the counting center rather than passing through multiple hands.
Well, thank you very much. Ms. Batchelor, same question goes for you. Do you believe in the integrity of our elections here in Washington, and why or why not?
I think that we do have integrity in our voting system. I get my voter's pamphlet, and I get my
Your ballot?
Yeah, my ballot.
There
Thank you. So anyway, I get my ballot in the mail, and I know when I don't have anybody forcing me to put the pen to that ballot to be able to choose who I want to choose. And I think that as far as security goes, I think cybersecurity is always that piece that we really need to manage and maintain at the highest level when it comes to our voters and our votes. I think everybody deserves the right to vote without pressure of how they vote. So I think that the cybersecurity, as well as being able to make sure that those ballots get into the hands of the voters, is important. And those voters get their ballots back within a marginal time so that they know that it's in. You know, I do have a problem with accessibility because I work with a lot of folks that are disabled, and I know that it's difficult for them to be able to get to and from areas, and some of them want to vote in person. And I think having accessibility is a big thing. So I think that if we make it accessible, safe, secure, we're doing a good job. And I already think that Washington does a good job about that.
All right, Thank you, Ms. Batchelor. We will talk about cybersecurity a little more in depth, not just related to elections as it pertains to cybersecurity. Our next question is about daycare. The need for daycare assistance for children and help for the elderly was highlighted during the pandemic. Do you plan to support any legislation that might help with these issues? How and why or why not? Ms. Batchelor, you're first this time.
You want it to benefit everyone. So it's really doing the research behind the legislation to find out what the needs are behind it and what the cost is, and being able to meet the budgets that we have in the state. I know that parents are really in need of secure and safe daycare. I know that there's people that pass their children to the cheapest person that will take care of them, but that's not always the best solution. And I can only afford this because I'm making $15 an hour, or I'm making just the bare minimum wage, trying to make everything meet. So I have a free babysitter, but is that always optimal? So I think that making sure that our children are safe in daycare, as far as care services go, is really important. I think that women need to be supported in the state better. I think that working parents, it's very difficult for them to work, have to take off and go because their child is sick, you know, and then you're getting feedback from your employer saying, hey, I needed you here.
Well, now let's turn that same question to you, Mr. Barrington, about daycare and child care assistance when it comes to the elderly, and how that was highlighted during the pandemic. Do you see there being a path for any legislation to help out families in those regards?
I think so. I think what we need to do is to have a better system in place for teaching our children. One thing that we learned is that our schools are not teaching our kids what we want them to teach. We're finding that instead of teaching, math, science, and all the things that we need, we're finding that across the country that they're being taught, things that are not associated with those core standards. So I think there is some legislation that needs to be in place there. As far as the elderly, I do think that we need to improve that. The elderly do, after a time, get kind of pushed off to the wayside. And I think we need to have a couple more programs in place for that. Now, I'm not saying that those come from a state level. I'm saying those come from a more local level.
And you said, I wanted to expand just real quick with the last 20 seconds you have here. You said local schools aren't teaching math and science as part of their curriculum.
Well, I'd say maybe not effectively, because we've seen over the last couple of years, our test scores stay pretty stagnant instead of improving. They've been on a downhill slope since I was a kid. I remember being a kid growing up here in the Tri-Cities, and yeah, I learned those things, but it wasn't applied to me specifically. So I think we need a little bit more application to individual kids.
All right.
Maybe smaller classrooms.
All right. Well, I appreciate the answer to the follow-up question there. Now, next question has to do with nuclear power. Senator Brown was a proponent of some of these smaller modular nuclear reactors. What is your position on them?
Oh, I totally am in favor for them. Nuclear power has been shown to be an incredible source of energy, very clean as well. Especially with the modular systems, they're much smaller, require a lot less energy to keep them cool, keep them safe, and with enough of them, we can power our grid for years on end.
And Ms. Batchelor, same question, I'll turn that to you. Your stance on these modular nuclear reactors.
I actually supported Senator Brown in doing that and that type of thinking, because it gives opportunity for more employment. It also gives opportunity for us to bring it closer to the communities that it's going to serve. So I'm definitely on board with that. I really think that that's out of the box thinking. I grew up around the Satsuk nuclear power plant at one point in my life, and it's just amazing how they work. And as Mr. Barrington said, you know, it can keep our grid working, and I think that it's just going to improve the delivery of service to all.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Now, next question. This is a hot topic right now. We want to talk about it, guns. And if elected, what specific pieces of gun legislation would you support? And what would you change or add? And also, what's your position on banning the AR-15, what is colloquially known as an assault weapon? What's your stance on that? Ms. Batchelor, your first year.
I lost my son to suicide, gunshot wound to the head. I lost my grandson to an in-home gun accident, gunshot to the head. I think that when we have ownership of weapons, we don't think that anyone's going to use them against themselves or there's going to be an accident. That happens frequently, more frequent than anybody realizes. And I think that if we're going to have reform on weapons, I don't see where the AR-15 has a use. I think that it's an assault weapon and it's used for ego more than it is for anything that's comprehensive in using for, say, let's go out and get our kill for the year and get that that meat in the freezer. I just think that it's more for entertainment than it is for actual use. But, you know, I have friends of mine that still yell at me about that. That's my AR-14 or 15, and I can do what I want to. You're taking my gun rights away. I'm asking you to be more pragmatic about why you're owning guns. And if it's for ego, why?
Thank you very much. And I didn't know that personal story about you. I appreciate you sharing that here today. Mr. Barrington, I'll turn that question to you as well, since everybody's talking about just what can be done in terms of legislation when it comes to guns, specifically AR-15s and the like.
Well, I'd like to first say I'm truly sorry for your loss. While accidents and suicides can happen, firearms are unique to this country. I wholeheartedly support the use of firearms and the conservation of gun rights. What we've seen with the recent Supreme Court decision is that no one can take away your individual right to keep yourself safe. As far as AR-15s go, they are a very popular sporting firearm, and their use is highly available. Now, I do agree that there are some laws that should be in place. However, a lot of laws that have been put in place need to be repealed. For instance, the magazine ban that came into place came into place this year, that needs to go away. Now, firearms are a unique. Oh gosh.
Well, apologies, we are out of time.
No worries.
No time to make another point, but we will have a chance for some closing statements. Just a reminder to our candidates here. All right, let's move on to the next question because we're going to talk about elections a little bit. Ranked choice voting, the topic here. That may be brought forward in the 2023 legislative session as it was in 2022. It is being used in some other states, including Alaska, here out in the West. So please describe it in your words and state your position on ranked choice voting. Mr. Barrington.
So ranked choice voting, as I understand it, is where you place a number one next to your first choice and you place a number two to your second. I don't think that's a good idea. And the reason why is because as you basically you can just vote for everybody, and at that point, it really takes away the purpose of voting. Purpose of voting is to get honest, good people into positions where they can protect the liberties and the freedoms of the people. If we have a system like that, there's no ensuring that we elect those particular people.
All right, thank you very much. And Ms. Batchelor, same question to you on ranked choice voting. I guess the question is, could you please describe it in your words, and would you support it?
As Mr. Barrington said, it's your first and your second or your third, whatever the case is. Once that voting goes through, it's the first choice of that goes to the general election. So I looked at Alaska and I looked at Maine. I think it was Maine. And I was trying to kind of figure it out, and I watched a few videos, and I'm still on the fence about it. I'm not sure how well that'll go over in Washington. We have quite a few people that I know personally that would be like, I'm just too confused about this. I am confused about it. I don't really quite understand it, even though I watch the videos and I like doing the research on it. I get it, but I don't get how that's going to equate in the end, and I just like to wait and see.
A little bit of a learning curve, what you're saying, on something new
I
like
think
that.
it would be that way with most people. I was trying to figure that out, and I look at the group that I work with. If you have disabilities, or that might be difficult to be able to figure that and within time. So I think making it simpler.
I see. All right, thank you very much. All right, moving on to the next question. It has to do with elections as well, specifically when it comes to those district lines. They were redistricted across the state, recently redrawn, and the process became a little bit controversial, I would say. Legislators write the rules for redistricting. Are there any changes you'd support to the Washington state redistricting process, and if so, what would that change to those processes be, Ms. Batchelor?
Honestly, redistricting has been going on for the longest time, and what I don't like about it is that I can't figure out what district I'm in until after they do it, and then when I'm not in the same district that I was, I'm like, how, So I think that the equity that comes out of redistricting needs to be looked at. Because if it's redistricted to a point of this group or that group, more votes came out in this area, let's redraw those lines, I think that fairness and equity is what I would be looking at in redistricting.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Barrington, same question to you. Any changes you'd support when it comes to the redistricting, not just drawing the lines, but the process that the state goes through to redraw those lines?
Well, I think I would support a legislation that doesn't put things on party line, where it's more geographical. You get a more consistent mix of political lines. Because right now, somebody gets in power, they redistrict to favor them. I think that's where I would go, is just keep it a nice, consistent mix. If you're voting or you're redistricting just to guarantee votes, I think that's kind of backwards.
The balance between what we would call redistricting and gerrymandering, I think, is probably the difference there. All right, next question, and certainly another thing that is a hot topic right now with the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, and that has to do with abortion. And really, the position you are running for now suddenly has much more influence on that, at least when it comes to Washington state. What kind of legislative policies do you or would you support when it comes to abortion?
Personally, I am very much against abortion. I don't understand how anyone can justify the taking of an innocent life. As far as policy, I think there are some policies that we can look at that can be a compromise, where most abortions are banned to protect the life of the unborn, but then in extreme cases, we have some policies in place to where, there are options for other people.
And I guess, 48 seconds left as I elaborate on the question is, within that policy, and you mentioned some of the nuance in there about the times that you would support it or say it would be okay to do.
I would only support it for rape. That's the only way I would support it. But then again, there are other options. You can put the child up for adoption. You can hand it over to another member of the family. There are other options besides killing the child.
Thank you very much. Ms. Batchelor, same question to you. What would your policy on abortion look like here in Washington State?
Oh man, this is like the hardest question, because who are you protecting, who are you not protecting? And women who, I happen to be a 16-year-old pregnancy. So when I was 16, I was pregnant. And at that time, I had my baby in 1979. And looking back, the option that I didn't want was to be able, or to have to abort my child. That was my choice. But those that found out that I was pregnant were telling me, get the abortion, get the abortion. So I think that it should be left up to a woman. I think it should be left up to a woman's mind and ability to either have the child or not have the child. I don't think that having laws that restrict opportunity and options should be written by men. I think those should be written by women, because ultimately it's a woman that has to bear the cost of things. And I don't see people stepping up and saying, hey, I'll take care of your baby and I'll take care of you while you're pregnant. It's not happening. And it's like services end up being utilized. So I think that it should be up to the doctor and the woman that's pregnant. That's why we have HIPAA. It's nobody's business but the doctor and the patient.
Thank you, Ms. Batchelor. Appreciate it. And next question, it has to do with, sorry, we're asking some hypothetical legislation questions here, but that's the purpose of this forum. Do you think you would introduce or support policies that help people of color, women, children living in poverty, the LGBTQ community, and I guess more broadly, just marginalized groups? What could you introduce in this area when it comes to legislation to help those groups? And why or why not? Ms. Batchelor.
I think that there's been too many things that have gone against those communities. And I was raised in a mixed household, so interracial as well as multiracial later. My stepfather happens to be a black gentleman. And I love this man just like anybody else would love their own father. I have sisters and brothers that happen to be mixed, and I have family of different races. And I've seen how they've suffered, and I've seen things happen that aren't cool, man. So it's like, I think that there needs to be more legislation that protects people, because these special classes of people are being attacked, and they have been historically beaten, killed, raped, and hurt, not given opportunities like you and I would have because of the color of our skin. I think that we have special protections under law for certain people, but not for other people. And I think that when you look at the historical events that have occurred, our African American community should have been the first to get those classifications.
Thank you, Ms. Batchelor. And we're going to move on. Mr. Barrington, the same question to you. What would legislation look like in support of marginalized groups in your community?
Not sure if there's any legislation that can be enacted that hasn't been, but what I think we really need to do is come back to the family, to have the parents, the kids, have the family start to become better people. That's the whole reason why we're here, is to become better. If we continually try to divide ourselves based on these arbitrary, classifications, we're not becoming better people. We're becoming worse off. Because who's to say that, you, because of X characteristic that you can't change, is somehow less than, this other person based off of their characteristics that they can't change. What we really need to do is come back together as humans and see each other for what we truly are as members of the human race.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Barrington. And next question let's talk about our land here in Washington State a little bit. Whether or not to remove the dams has been an important issue that has been talked about plenty here in Washington. It affects a number of groups. So what is your position on the removal of dams in the state and why?
I don't think it's a good idea. And the reason why is we have a lot of power generation from those. We have a lot of transportation utilizing the dams. And by taking those out, we eliminate those opportunities that we have. I think the report said something like, several millions of tons of product will be lost on transportation throughout the river. So I don't think it's a great idea to take these out. There are other ways to help the situations that are arise, such as the fish. There are other solutions that we need to look at, but taking the dams out is not one of them.
All right, and same question to you, Ms. Batchelor.
So there's a lot of political interest in keeping dams. And there's a lot of interest as our indigenous people have needs. And the fish is a huge piece of that. I know that when I was in history class and growing up and learning about Washington State history, they talked about the arguments not to put dams in. And it was a political issue back then. So now it's become full circle, here we are. So as far as I'm concerned, and becoming senator is going to give me opportunity to find solutions, and that's what I'm based in, is finding solutions. And I believe that whatever the outcome will be, it will have to be inclusive of everyone, not just a political party or a political reason for keeping something or getting rid of something. So.
All right, thank you very much. And now I want to get to a question. We've added a couple of questions because we have the time for it, and you brought it up a little bit earlier about cybersecurity. And so I want to ask what, if any, legislation or regulations you would enact, if you had an opportunity to do so, to enhance cybersecurity to protect people and or institutions.
I used to work with a guy that was really into all that cybersecurity stuff, and I was like, what's cybersecurity? I didn't know enough about it. And then when I saw that he could get in the back door to something that he shouldn't have been in the back door of, I was like, oh, wait a minute. You can do that? And so he would be considered a hacker. He's no longer a hacker. He's working for another state as their security advisor, and he does really well. So I understand the aspects of it. I don't understand everything that goes into it, but we definitely need huge cybersecurity, and I think that we need that for our public too, protecting our public, because we have so much loss of identity. We have different countries going into our stuff and on a public platform and being able to steal things and take, I mean, I had charges to my debit card, and I had to go get another debit card because somebody must have hacked my stuff. So I think that on a public level as well as our governmental level, we have to have the tightest and the best security systems available.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Barrington, same question. What would legislation look like that would protect people from these cybersecurity threats?
I think making a deal with some of the VPN companies and having those, VPNs installed in some of the public places like libraries, stuff like that, kind of help protect people's information, especially on just a government need. And this goes back to voter security. Having VPNs on our voter security or on our voter machines will definitely increase security there.
All right, next question is we're talking about wildfires. As I speak to you now, prior to the airing of this program, going through a little bit of a heat wave here, and things will dry out as they always do. So as a legislator in the 8th District, what do you think your role is in either prevention or maybe outcomes during a wildfire fight? How do you tackle that issue as a senator?
I think what it really comes down to is making sure that we have the resources when those wildfires happen to make sure that we can mitigate and end those quickly. As far as prevention goes, I think there's a lot of things that we can do as far as cleaning out debris, cleaning off stuff off the ground that is easily combustible, to where we prevent those mass fires. Specifically, those stuff in the forests and sagebrush and stuff like that. We can mitigate a few things.
Do you think there's something on a legislative level that could help mitigation of some of those issues?
I don't know if there is. It's something I'd have to do more research into. I just don't. I don't understand all of it fully, but I think there's some things that we can probably do on local levels.
All right, Ms. Barrington, thank you very much. Ms. Batchelor, same question for you. Once again, talking about legislation, but what can you do as an elected official to help mitigate some of these issues?
I think that when it comes to wildfires and stuff, so California has certain things that they're doing. One of the, and my biological father was a firefighter out of Montana back in the 50s and 60s. So I think that when you have conservation corps across the state working in tandem with the forestry and working with firefighters to eliminate the debris and things that are, naturally going to start fires. But I think that the Conservation Corps really does a good job at helping prevent those fires, because they can go out and they can be in those situations of taking care of that underbrush and taking care of the burn-offs and just really being able to make sure that our wild areas are cared for. So I think implementing a Conservation Corps is really a big deal.
All right, thank you very much. And last question before we get to some closing statements here. Hopefully we're warmed up by now, right? We want to talk about elections again. And, I want to preface this question with, if you go on to Ballotpedia or wherever to find out about your elected officials, it'll actually tell you how much money has been donated to their campaigns. And so I want to talk about money and its influence on elections. Do you think that should be managed, and how? What do you think of financial influence on elections, Ms. Batchelor?
I think that financial influence comes with a lot of strings. At first, I was like, I gotta start fundraising. I've got to do this. I've got to do that, right? And it's difficult to fundraise and sell yourself out there. But I also think that it comes with certain strings. And there's special interest groups that are always looking for somebody to support them. And they have money to give, and their supporters will give money, and I think that it kind of determines the breadth of someone's character. So I decided that I'm not going to ask people for money, and I'm going to do this as best as I can without having all of these different interest groups supporting my campaign with financial dollars. So I'm not for sale.
Well, yeah, I was going to re-ask the question to you, Mr. Barrington. I think the more pointed way to say it is, can our elected officials be bought? And I think that is probably the major concern here. So how can that be reduced, or should it be?
I think it should be reduced. Money in politics is a big concern, and I think we do need to pass some legislation that keeps the bigger money out of politics, and just keep it at local donations. Like Ms. Batchelor said, a lot of those come with strings. And I don't know about you, but I don't like to be beholden to anybody else when it comes to that. So definitely get some money out of politics.
All right, thank you very much. All right, like I said, before we go, we do have some time for some closing statements, a last word really on yourself or any topic or any gaps that you want to fill on any of the topics that we talked about today. These closing statements are set at 90 seconds, so we go back to the top of the order. Mr. Barrington, it's your turn.
Awesome. Well, thank you for this opportunity to come here, and it's been a little rocky, but I appreciate it. I stand for freedom. I stand for the people of Washington. Stand for this country. I don't like, and I don't want our freedoms to be taken from us just because of politics. I want us to stand united as a people and to be free. The greatest freedoms that we have, so often are we so willing to vote them away. So I hope that as we look into the future, we can see past our differences, and we can come together as brothers and sisters, as friends, and as family, to create a better world for not only us, but for our children. In the end, it always comes down to our living legacies, our children.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barrington. Ms. Batchelor, your last word here, your closing statement, 90 seconds.
Sure. So I come from a military background, a family. I have many people that I support due to that. I've been boots on the ground, actively supporting my community. And it's been very interesting working in crisis and trying to help people stabilize and get the supports they need. And that's what I intend to take with me to Olympia, is your voices, your needs, and how I can be the one that implements those things in a proactive, equitable way. And I'm just going to carry your voices. Call me. I'll talk to you. Leave me a message. If you have something ugly to say, I'm just going to skip over your message, but I'm willing to talk to all of the people that want to talk to me. And I'm willing to offer any kind of help that I can if they're in crisis or if they're in any kind of way needing some kind of support that they don't know where to find the help from. So that's who I am, bottom line. I love people, I love my community, and I'm here to serve.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Batchelor. Mr. Barrington, really, I appreciate your time today. I know we're all kind of dusting off the cobwebs of this whole TV thing, but honestly, I'm appreciative that you're here in person, that we didn't have to do this virtually today, so appreciate your time. Good luck with the best of your campaigns. Keep them clean.
Thank you.
That's the way it goes. Well, we appreciate their desire to work here in the 8th District. We also want to mention that they are running against Mr. Matt Benke, who could not be here today. Speaking of this 2022 primary, ballots for it are set to be mailed by the end of this week. The deadline to register to vote online is July 25th, but you can register in person all the way up to Election Day. And that Election Day is August 2nd. But we aren't done here. We have hours of local election coverage coming to you all week. Tomorrow, speaking with candidates for the 8th Legislative District for the Representative Position 2 seat and talking with all 4 candidates on that primary ballot. And if you missed anything from this program, we'll be sure to have all of our recorded forums uploaded at nwpb.org/vote2022. That does it for us tonight. On behalf of the League of Women Voters and Northwest Public Broadcasting, we thank those of you who tuned in. Have a great night.